There comes a moment in every believer's journey when God starts shifting things, stretching things, and stirring things inside of you. It doesn't always feel comfortable, and it rarely looks the way you imagined, but that's how growth works. That's how transformation happens. Some of you have been wondering, God, am I really changing? Am I truly growing? Because let's be honest, growth doesn't always come with a loud announcement. It happens in the quiet moments, in the battles nobody sees, in the prayers you whisper through tears. But let me tell you something. If God started the work in you, He is faithful to complete it. So today I want to give you 5 undeniable signs that you are growing spiritually in Christ. Because sometimes the enemy wants to convince you that you're stagnant when in reality you are shifting, stretching, and stepping into the person God has called you to be. Are you ready to recognize the growth in your own life? Let's get into it. There comes a point in your spiritual journey when you realize that not everything requires a reaction. The things that used to trigger you, the words that used to cut deep, and the situations that once had you spiraling no longer have the same effect. You begin to notice a shift in how you handle adversity, conflict, and even your own emotions. This isn't because the challenges have disappeared, but because your spirit has matured. You no longer operate from a place of impulsive reaction, but instead respond with wisdom, discernment, and grace. In the past, when someone disrespected you, you may have snapped back instantly, defending yourself with sharp words and an unguarded heart. Maybe you held grudges, letting bitterness take root in your spirit. Or perhaps you internalized every criticism, allowing it to shake your confidence and determine your worth. But now, something is different. You pause before you speak. You assess before you engage. You pray before you react. This is growth. This is the Holy Spirit working within you, transforming the way you move through life. It's not that you don't feel the sting of someone's words or actions. It's not that you don't recognize injustice or disrespect. But instead of reacting in the flesh, you seek wisdom before responding. You understand that every battle is not yours to fight. You begin to ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Is this worth my peace? Is this something God is calling me to engage in? Or is it a distraction meant to pull me out of alignment? When spiritual growth takes place, you start to realize that your words carry weight and not every situation deserves your voice. You become aware of the power of silence, the strength in restraint, and the wisdom in waiting before responding. The enemy thrives in chaos and impulsivity, in moments where emotions dictate actions. But when you grow in Christ, you learn that true strength is found in self-restraint. You don't allow anger to lead you. You don't let frustration dictate your decisions. Instead, you choose peace, wisdom, and discernment. This shift also begins to affect how you navigate difficult conversations. When people come to you with negativity, gossip, or drama, you don't entertain it the way you once did. You recognize that your spirit is too valuable to be contaminated by unnecessary conflict. You start setting boundaries that protect your peace, and those who thrived on your reactions begin to feel the difference. Some will call you distant. Others may accuse you of being different, but that's the point. You are different. You are evolving, growing, and aligning with the version of yourself that God has called you to be. There's a level of wisdom that comes with recognizing when to speak and when to stay silent. When you respond with wisdom, you're no longer feeding into energy that drains you. You're no longer letting temporary emotions dictate long-term decisions. You're no longer engaging in battles that have no purpose. Instead, you are choosing to move with intentionality. You are choosing to walk in alignment with God's purpose for your life. Spiritual growth teaches you that not everything is personal. You begin to see beyond the surface, understanding that sometimes people are projecting their own pain onto you. You start discerning when someone's words are coming from their own brokenness rather than a true reflection of who you are. And because of this, you don't take offense the way you used to. You don't feel the need to defend yourself in every situation. You don't let the opinions of others shake the identity that God has given you. Your response to adversity is no longer controlled by emotions, but by faith. You trust that God will handle what you don't need to. You believe that He is fighting battles on your behalf. You understand that wisdom is knowing when to engage and when to step back, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to take action and when to let God move. This kind of growth isn't always easy. There will be moments when you feel the urge to react, to defend, to prove your point. But when you pause, when you take a breath, when you allow God to lead instead of your emotions, you begin to see the difference in how you experience life. Peace becomes your priority. Wisdom becomes your guide. And instead of wasting energy on things that don't serve your purpose, you channel it into what truly matters. There was a time when temptation had you in a chokehold. The things that you knew weren't good for you still had a way of pulling you back in. You would pray for strength, but when that familiar situation presented itself, you found yourself falling into the same cycle. You knew better, but somehow knowing better didn't always translate into doing better. You struggled not because you didn't want to change, but because the hold that temptation had on you was stronger than the discipline you had developed. But something shifted. One day you realized that the very thing that used to control you no longer had the same grip. The urge that once felt impossible to resist started to weaken. You found yourself saying no to things that you once felt powerless against. The conversations that used to lure you in no longer interested you. The habits that once defined you became uncomfortable. The places that used to feel familiar started to feel foreign. You were changing and the enemy knew it. Temptation is tricky because it never presents itself as destruction. It shows up as comfort, as familiarity, as a quick fix for a deeper issue. It disguises itself as an opportunity to escape, to satisfy, to fill a void that only God can truly fill. It knows exactly where to attack, exactly where you feel the weakest, and exactly how to make you second guess your convictions. But when you start growing spiritually, your awareness shifts. You begin to recognize temptation for what it truly is, a distraction from your destiny, a counterfeit version of what God has for you, a delay to the promise that are waiting on the other side of your obedience. At first, the struggle is still there. You feel the pull, but you also feel the conviction. You sense the battle between your flesh and your spirit. But the more you lean into God, the stronger you become. The more you feed your spirit, the less your flesh controls you. The desires that once ruled you start losing their power. You begin to realize that just because something calls your name doesn't mean you have to answer. Just because an opportunity presents itself doesn't mean it's meant for you. Just because you feel a temptation doesn't mean you have to fall into it. Growth happens when you start making choices that align with your future rather than your past. When you begin to prioritize your purpose over your pleasure. When you decide that what God has for you is more important than what feels good in the moment. You stop making decisions based on impulse and start making them based on wisdom. You stop allowing your emotions to dictate your actions. You develop the discipline to say no, not because you don't feel the temptation, but because you recognize that giving in is no longer worth what it costs. There's something powerful about realizing that you are no longer enslaved to the same patterns that once controlled you. It's evidence of transformation. It's proof that God has been working on you, strengthening you, and preparing you for greater. The temptations don't necessarily disappear, but your ability to withstand them grows. You start to understand that every time you resist, you are reclaiming the power that once seemed impossible to hold. Every time you say no, you are reinforcing the discipline that God is developing in you. Every time you walk away from what used to tempt you, you are stepping further into the version of yourself that you were always meant to be. The enemy will always try to remind you of who you used to be. He will whisper thoughts that make you question if you've really changed. He will try to pull you back into old situations, old relationships, old habits, just to see if he still has access. But spiritual growth means recognizing that just because you used to fall for it doesn't mean you have to keep falling for it. You are no longer the person you were. You are no longer bound by what once held you. you are stronger, wiser, and more aware of what is at stake. The freedom that comes with overcoming temptation is something that words can't fully capture. It's not just about saying no, it's about realizing that you don't even desire what used to control you. It's about knowing that your spirit is being elevated to a place where you are no longer feeding the things that drain you. It's about stepping into a level of authority where you walk past what used to trip you up and keep moving forward without hesitation. It's about becoming so focused on what God has for you that anything that doesn't align with His purpose no longer has the power to distract you. Pain has a way of making you question everything. It forces you into places you never expected to be, pushes you to wrestle with emotions you never thought you'd have to confront, and makes you wonder if you'll ever feel whole again. At first, pain feels like an interruption, like something that wasn't supposed to happen, like a mistake in the script of your life. It makes you ask questions that seem to have no answers. Why did this happen? Why me? Why now? It makes you look for ways to escape, to numb, to avoid the reality of what you are feeling. But as you grow spiritually, something shifts. You start to see pain differently. Instead of running from it, you begin to seek God in the middle of it. Instead of seeing it as a punishment, you start to recognize it as a process. The very thing that was meant to break you is now molding you. The very thing that was meant to destroy your faith is deepening it. The very thing that caused you the most tears is leading you into a level of transformation you never imagined. Spiritual growth doesn't mean pain stops coming. It means you stop letting it define you. You stop allowing it to convince you that God has forgotten you. You begin to understand that pain has purpose, that suffering is not wasted, that even in your hardest moments, God is working something out for your good. You stop asking why this is happening to you and start asking what God is trying to teach you through it. You shift from victim to student. You recognize that pain carries lessons, that struggle brings strength, that discomfort produces growth. At first, it doesn't feel like growth. It feels like breaking. It feels like losing control. It feels like being stretched beyond what you thought you could handle. But over time, you start to see the change in yourself. You realize that the things that used to shake you don't have the same power anymore. You recognize that the heartbreak that once defined you no longer has a grip on your identity. You notice that the trials you once thought would destroy you actually made you stronger, wiser, more resilient. Growth happens when you learn to sit in the pain without rushing to escape it. When you stop numbing yourself and start allowing yourself the process to heal, to grow through what you are going through. It happens when you stop seeing hardship as evidence that God is distant and start recognizing it as proof that He is developing you. He doesn't waste anything. Every tear, every setback, every disappointment is being used to shape you into the person He has called you to be. Pain also reveals what is inside of you. It exposes the areas that need healing, the places in your heart that are still wounded, the patterns that need breaking. It forces you to confront the things you've been avoiding. It shows you where your faith truly stands. When everything is going well, faith is easy, but when life falls apart, when prayers seem unanswered, when you don't understand what God is doing, that is where real faith is built. That is where trust is formed. That is where your relationship with God deepens, not because of what He is giving you, but because of who He is, even in the pain. You begin to realize that purpose is often hidden in the very places you wanted to avoid. Avoid that the pain you endured is the very thing God will use to elevate you, that what hurt you will ultimately be what helps someone else. You stop running from your story and start embracing it because you understand that everything you've been through is connected to something greater than you. The pain wasn't random. The struggle wasn't meaningless. The journey wasn't a mistake. As you grow, you learn that pain doesn't last forever. But the strength, the wisdom, and the faith it builds in you do. You see that even in your worst moments, God was working. That even in your darkest nights, He was there. That even when you thought you were alone, He was carrying you through it. The very things that were meant to break you became the foundation for the person you are becoming. The suffering that once seemed unbearable became the testimony that will inspire and uplift others. The pain you thought would define you forever became the very thing that propelled you into the next level of your purpose. There was a time when you surrounded yourself with people simply because they were familiar. The friendships, the relationships, the connections you had weren't always aligned with where you were going, but they felt comfortable. You entertained conversations that didn't serve you, engaged in activities that didn't align with your growth, and allowed access to people who weren't contributing to your purpose. It wasn't that they were bad people, it was that they weren't growing in the same direction as you. But when you start growing spiritually, something shifts. The people who once felt like home no longer fit the version of you that God is shaping now. The conversations that once interested you begin to feel empty. The relationships that once defined you start to feel like they are holding you back. At first, it's uncomfortable. You don't always recognize the shift right away. You just start to feel a sense of distance. You notice that the things you once laughed about no longer amuse you. The gossip, the negativity, the complaining that used to be a normal part of your environment now feels draining. You find yourself struggling to engage in the same way because something in you has changed. Your mind is being renewed, your spirit is being elevated, your perspective is shifting. And when you change, it naturally disrupts the dynamics of your relationships. Some people will notice the difference in you and celebrate it. They will recognize your growth, support your transformation, and respect your journey. Others, however, will feel threatened by it. They will say you're acting different. They will accuse you of thinking you're better than them. They will try to pull you back into the version of yourself that was more convenient for them. Not everyone will understand your growth, and that's okay. Some people were only assigned to a certain chapter of your life, and as painful as it may be, their role in your story is complete. Spiritual growth requires discernment when it comes to relationships. It requires you to evaluate who is meant to walk with you into your next season and who is only meant to be part of your past. It forces you to examine the fruit of the connections in your life. Do they encourage your growth or do they hinder it? Do they push you closer to God or do they distract you from Him? Do they uplift and inspire you or do they keep you trapped in old patterns? As you mature in your faith, you begin to understand that not all connections are meant to last forever. Some people were placed in your life to teach you a lesson, to prepare you for where you're going, or to show you what you no longer need. This shift isn't always easy. There will be moments when you feel lonely. Moments when you miss the familiarity of old friendships. Moments when you wonder if you made the right decision by distancing yourself from certain people. But every time you choose growth over comfort, you are choosing to walk in alignment with what God has for you. Every time you say no to relationships that no longer serve your purpose, you are making room for divine connections that will. As your circle shifts, you start to notice something beautiful happening. God begins to send people into your life who match your new season. People who challenge you to be better, people who inspire you to stay disciplined in your faith, people who pour into you rather than just take from you. These are the connections that align with your purpose. They may not look like what you expected. They may come in unexpected ways. But when God brings people into your life for the right reasons, you feel the difference. Not everyone will understand your growth, and that's okay. You weren't meant to stay the same. You weren't meant to stay stuck in the same cycle, surrounded by the same energy, engaging in the same habits. When God elevates you, not everyone can go with you. And that's not rejection, it's redirection. It's God protecting your purpose. It's Him making sure that your circle is filled with people who can handle where He's taking you. Some relationships are seasonal. Some friendships were meant for a moment, not a lifetime. And the more you grow, the more you realize that letting go isn't always losing. Sometimes it's making space for something greater. There was a time when the things of this world satisfied you. Entertainment, distractions, achievements, relationships, and material possessions all seem to provide a sense of fulfillment, even if it was temporary. You found joy in what was around you and you could obtain in what made you feel comfortable. But as you grow spiritually, something inside of you starts to shift. The things that once entertained you no longer hold the same appeal. The conversations that once felt normal now feel empty. The activities that once brought excitement no longer bring the same satisfaction. A hunger begins to grow inside of you, a longing that nothing in this world seems to satisfy. You start craving something deeper, something real, something eternal. You find yourself drawn to God's presence in a way you never were before. It's not just about attending church on Sundays or reading scripture out of obligation. It's a deep personal desire to be close to Him, to hear His voice, to feel His presence in your everyday life. The things of this world become background noise compared to the richness of being near to God. Your spirit begins to thirst for something that entertainment can't quench, that relationships can't fill, that success can't provide. At first, this hunger feels unfamiliar. You may not even recognize what's happening inside of you. You just know that something is missing, something greater is calling you. You may try to satisfy it the way you used to by chasing after the things that once made you happy. But the more you try, the more you realize that nothing seems to be enough anymore. The temporary highs don't last. The distractions don't keep you engaged. The things that used to bring you comfort now feel hollow. It's because your spirit is awakening. It's because you are growing. It's because you are being pulled closer to the source of true fulfillment. Spiritual hunger doesn't mean you are lacking. It means you are expanding. It means God is calling you deeper. It means He is preparing you for something greater, and your soul can feel it even before your mind fully understands it. You begin to desire moments of solitude, not because you're lonely, but because you crave time with God. You find yourself drawn to worship, not just in church, but in your everyday life. You start valuing time in His Word, not as an obligation, but as nourishment for your spirit. You begin to see prayer differently. It's no longer just something you do before meals or at the end of the day. It becomes a lifeline, a connection, a conversation that you never want to end. You find yourself talking to God throughout your day in the small moments, in the quiet spaces, in the ordinary routines. You don't just pray because you need something. You pray because you desire His presence. You pray because you feel the difference when you don't. You pray because it brings you peace that nothing else can. Your heart starts to change in ways you didn't expect. The things that once angered you no longer have the same power. The worries that used to consume you are now placed in God's hands. The fears that once held you back lose their grip as you learn to trust in His plan. Your perspective shifts. You start seeing life differently. You begin to understand that everything you experience is either drawing you closer to God or pulling you away, and you become intentional about choosing Him. People around you may not understand the shift. They may wonder why you don't engage in the same conversations, why you don't entertain the same distractions, why you seem different. Some may even try to pull you back into old habits, into old ways of thinking, into the mindset you've outgrown. But when you've tasted the presence of God, nothing else compares. When you've experienced true peace, you don't want to return to what stole it. When you found joy in Him, you don't need validation from the world. This hunger for God changes everything. It affects how you spend your time, how you make decisions, how you respond to challenges. You stop chasing things that are temporary and start investing in what is eternal. You stop seeking approval from people and start seeking alignment with God. You stop worrying about what you can't control and start trusting the one who controls it all. You begin to notice His presence in places you never did before. In the quiet moments when you sit in stillness, in the beauty of His creation, in the unexpected ways He speaks to you throughout your day. You become more sensitive to His voice, more aware of His guidance, more attuned to the ways He is moving in your life. Your priorities begin to shift. What once seemed important now feels insignificant. What once felt urgent now pales in comparison to the things of God. You start valuing things differently. You recognize that time spent with Him is never wasted. You understand that pouring into your spiritual growth matters more than anything else. You realize that your relationship with God isn't just another part of your life, it is your life. Everything else flows from that connection. There are moments when this hunger feels overwhelming, when you feel a deep yearning for more of God, yet you're not sure what to do with it. You may feel restless, like something inside of you is stretching, expanding, growing beyond what you've known. It's because God is preparing you for more. He is increasing your capacity, stretching your faith, drawing you into a deeper level of intimacy with Him. Spiritual hunger isn't something that gets satisfied once and then disappears. The more you grow, the more you crave. The more you experience His presence, the more you long for it. The more you trust Him, the more you realize how much you need Him. It's a lifelong journey, a continuous pursuit, a never-ending desire to be close to the one who created you. This hunger refines you. It purifies your heart, removes distractions, breaks down the things that once held you back. It teaches you that God is not just a part of your life, He is the source of it. He is the foundation, the center, the reason for everything. You start to see the evidence of this hunger in your actions. You choose prayer over panic. You seek wisdom instead of reacting impulsively. You prioritize your spiritual well-being over momentary pleasures. You become more patient, more loving, more at peace, not because life is suddenly perfect, but because you are rooted in something greater than your circumstances. As this hunger grows, you begin to experience God in ways you never imagined. You start hearing Him speak in the quiet moments. You begin to see His hand in every detail of your life. You recognize His guidance in decisions, His peace in chaos, His love in ways you never noticed before. You start walking with a confidence that doesn't come from your own strength, but from knowing that you are deeply connected to the one who holds your future. This hunger is a gift. It's a sign that God is calling you higher. It's a reminder that you were never meant to be satisfied with the things of this world. It's proof that he is drawing you closer, inviting you into a deeper relationship, revealing more of himself to you. The more you lean into this hunger, the more you will find what your soul has been longing for all along.